I reclaim my time, Madam Speaker. Now, see, this is when the politics of attack kick in. For anyone to sit here and say that Republicans don't care about people, that's just not true, and he knows it. It's a definitional question. If the gentleman differs with my characterization, it's not a handout, it's a hand up, okay. But what we were talking about was tax relief. It was not a tax cut. If you don't pay taxes, you can't get a tax cut. But what I'd say to the gentleman is this. Times are different right now, Madam Speaker. The American public understands the crossroads this country is at, that we are on a path to fiscal ruin. And the gentleman likes to continue to defend the stimulus bill as having been a success. Well, I would say to the Speaker, Madam Speaker, to the gentleman, not very many people in America think the stimulus bill was a success at generating jobs. And that's just almost a unanimous fact among most Americans. So if we know that, why would we continue to advocate the same policies? And instead, Madam Speaker, I would say again, I hope the gentleman would join us in advocating tax cuts for small businesses so that we can grow jobs in this economy. The gentleman did ask what tax cuts or what tax hikes occurred over this session and during the gentleman's party's majority rule. We know that there was a $65 billion tax increase on tobacco products. There was a almost $7 billion tax increase under the stimulus law, repealing guidance allowing certain payers to claim losses of an acquired corporation. There was another almost $23 billion of surtaxes extended for the federal unemployment program. And there was also, Madam Speaker, as the gentleman knows, a delay of rules reducing double taxation of American foreign nationals to the tune of almost $6 billion. Those are the tax hikes that have occurred in addition to the overwhelming billions and billions of dollars inside the health care bill. So, Madam Speaker, it is not accurate for the gentleman to represent that, number one, this Congress has not raised taxes on the middle class. We know differently. And number two, to sit here and hide behind the notion that there aren't going to be tax increases at the end of this year, and the fact that that realization is not impacting job growth or the lack thereof. Now, that's not being completely accurate, Madam Speaker, and I would say to the gentleman, times are different now. It is time for us to own up to the obligations that we face as a country and work together to try and put this country back onto a growth path. So with that, Madam Speaker.
Will my friend yield one more time?
I yield.
It is a new time. We're paying our bills. Now, we had to borrow a lot of money because we were in a very deep hole. And everybody said if you didn't, all economists, Marty Feldstein, conservative advisor to Ronald Reagan, said you need to put more money back in the economy. We didn't have any money. You had a $5.6 trillion surplus that you inherited. We inherited a $5 trillion deficit. So we had no money. Your administration spent it all. But you didn't pay for things you bought. You didn't pay for your tax cuts. Very nice to give tax cuts. But if you don't pay for them and they create deficits, then who's going to pay for them? Our children. And that's what happened. We went to war. One was absolutely essential. We went to another war that some say was of choice. That is in Iraq. We somewhat abandoned Afghanistan. We went to Iraq, and we didn't succeed in Afghanistan. But we didn't pay for either one of those wars. Who are we expecting to pay for those wars? Our children. You adopted a drug prescription program, which, very frankly, we made better in the health care bill. We made seniors more secure in getting their prescription drugs. But you didn't pay for it. Your economy that you left us, very frankly, is responsible for 38% of that deficit to which you referred. 90% plus of the deficit that confronts this country are direct results of the policies pursued in the last administration. Just as when Roosevelt inherited from the Hoover administration a very substantial downturn, it took him time to turn this economy around. turn that economy around. So I say to my friend, we are prepared to work together, but we're not prepared to pretend that when you say times are different, they are different. They are very different. The difference between a $5.6 trillion surplus and a $5 trillion deficit. The Bush administration inheritance and our inheritance. And that has made it tough. It's made it tough on us, tough on the American people. And we're trying to get out of this. I think we are. And again, I repeat to my friend, Larry Kudlow gave you some good advice. Very conservative guy on television. You know him. I know him. We appear on his program. And he urged those of you on the conservative side of the ledger, don't deny the facts. That's what Larry Kudlow said. Don't deny the progress that has been made. Because if you deny it, and people believe that denial, they won't think things are getting better, and they won't act accordingly. And that's not going to be good for our economy. It won't be good for our country. So I caution my friend to, when things are positive, have the ability to say, yes, we've made some positive progress from where we were before this administration came into office. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman, and in trying to close this colloquy, Madam Speaker, I would say the gentleman knows good and well that when we had a positive job growth report last month, I was the first one to speak out and acknowledge the fact that, yes, growing jobs is a good thing. We got a long way to go. The gentleman admits that we are at a different time now, and he points to the deficits, and he points to the fact that the old administration, he alleges, didn't pay its bills, and that perhaps we in the majority spent too much. Okay, fine. But it doesn't give this majority and this Congress and this administration any better or more license to go and bankrupt this country by continuing on the spending path, and that is my point. We are at a crossroads, Madam Speaker, I would tell to the gentleman. We have tremendous challenges before us. And as the American people know, if we don't stop the reckless policies of this town, it may very well lead to the fact that our kids and their kids will not enjoy the same freedoms and opportunities that we do. So I continue to tell the gentleman we stand ready to work with him to try and address this extremely critical time in our nation.
And I yield back. I'll simply say I agree with the gentleman. And I agree with the gentleman and certainly want to join together this effort. And the gentleman will observe that's why we have readopted statutory pay-go. We think that will constrain spending. That's why we've created a commission to look at spending and make recommendations to get a handle on the spending in this country and bring our deficit in line as it was in the 90s. And that is why the President has submitted a budget that freezes discretionary spending at last year's levels. So we agree with you that we need to move in that direction, and in fact we are. I'd say in final closing, Madam Speaker, I'd say that in order to get a handle on spending, just stop. And that is why we shouldn't allow for discussion of hiking taxes. It allows this body, this federal government, to have yet even more of the taxpayer dollars to decide how to spend. It's time for us to stop and practice fiscal discipline and get this economy back on track. And I yield back.